Good morning, everyone.
Good
It's
morning.
Guest Thursday on Daily Dose, and we are thrilled to be joined by Mike Sojka. Did I say that right, Mike?
You're good to go.
Oh, thank you. As someone whose name gets mispronounced a lot, it's a big deal to me, but it's not always easy to figure out the J's and what they actually mean up in Scandinavian land.
This is true.
Well, Mike, we're really happy to have you. We connected with you sometime during the pandemic for a number of reasons, because you do a number of things, but we've had this shared conversation for a while around your shared addiction. And so we're thrilled to have you on to talk about your journey, and also, sorry, my computer's doing something very peculiar, and also the work that you do as a coach in addition to your own addiction. So we'll start with the question we always start with, Mike, which is just, how did you get to this place of sobriety, and where do you want to start and take us along on that journey?
Yeah, so first of all, appreciate the opportunity to share. Hopefully there'll be something meaningful and useful for all the listeners that you have. I am basically a fourth generation alcoholic. I grew up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I probably became an alcoholic because my grandfather and then eventually my father both owned bars. Convenient business to get into if you're an alcoholic. It cuts into your profits, however. And so that's where my journey started, was I guess in that bondage and being a fourth generation alcoholic. Kind of the light bulb went off when I was probably a junior in college, and I had my own room, and I realized I was waking up almost every day in the morning, and the first thing I would do is drink. So I even hold records there for May term for drinking so many consecutive days in a row. And so not proud of those days, but that's basically where the journey started. Yeah, April 27th, 1982, I was set free from the addiction in a miraculous way. By set free, I mean this: I am a connoisseur now of good beer, and probably drink one or two a week at most with a good meal.
Okay.
And so there's no pull with the alcohol right now in my life. There hasn't been from quite some time. But as we've talked, Dana, and probably people can relate to this, if you have an addictive personality, a compulsive personality, sometimes you will kick one addiction only to lead into another one. And so the demons seem to always be there, literally. So that led me down a path to porn addiction for a while. I believe personally it's a harder nut to crack than alcohol is. A lot of people would compare it to meth or cocaine from that standpoint of breaking it. It's probably a more embarrassing addiction, kind of socially not acceptable as alcohol is from that standpoint. And then so I eventually, I am a coach, but I eventually hired a coach to help me with this, and dug a lot into Brene Brown stuff and self-love. And I think the crux of my addiction, probably growing up in a dysfunctional home, was just a lack of comprehending what love looks like and how to accept love from other people that wasn't conditional. It was always conditional at my house. And at the same time, grow to the point, because I think the crux of my issues is just loving myself. And so trying to figure out why I am having such a difficult time with that, and especially in light of me being a believer, which is counterintuitive. So yeah, that's been a challenge, and my coach is helping me work through that. He's also a former addict himself, and so he's shining the light and a lot of wisdom from that perspective. So as I beat that addiction, then I guess I've always had a problem overeating to a point. Whether that's an addiction or not, I don't know. I'm not obese. But at the same time, I'm compulsive and overeating at times, and so here again, it's another thing that I have to monitor, I guess, in my lifetime. So I have had my own coaching and consulting business since 2015, and a light bulb kind of went off in my head probably a year ago, but I'll backtrack a little bit further. So I kind of thought, there's a need for peer recovery coaching out there. And I'm a licensed coach, which very few peer recovery coaches are, because a peer recovery coach is basically someone who's been trained to coach. And they're a peer recovery coach because they are an addict or they've overcome addiction. So we're dealing with addicts. And so when Face It Together was in town, I decided to volunteer over there, get trained over there to become a peer recovery coach. And so I've been doing that now for 3.5 years. I do loved ones as well. I have two sons, both live in Fargo. I suspect my youngest has had addiction issues for many years. And so I hit both ends of the spectrum. Sadly, maybe what goes around comes around. In terms of being a loved one of an addict as well. So peer coaching involves either the addict or the loved one. But anyway, a light bulb went off in my head a year ago, and I thought, well, geez, why am I not offering that in my leadership innovations business as part of our coaching repertoire to do peer recovery coaching? And so we're attempting to do that as well. It's my way of giving back in a volunteer way, number one, and number two, I've been in the hopeless states to the point of suicide attempt. And so that's the worst you can get as an addict, obviously, is to get to that hopeless state and take your own life. So I've been down that path. Every day is a journey. I walk with friends a lot. I'm walking with a guy now who is having a really hard time with the porn addiction. In fact, he's on the verge of getting a divorce and with the 3 kids. And so it just
I'm
just a lot of pain.
yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing all of that, Mike, because I clearly it's not easy to talk about, and it requires a level of vulnerability that isn't easy for anybody to do. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question based on something you said early in this discussion?
Yeah.
You said that now you can enjoy 1 or 2 beers, good beers, a week. So Maz and I just had a conversation the other day, and he said that he's afraid, he doesn't really, I'm sorry to speak for you, but he doesn't really have any desire to drink, but he's afraid to even try it in case it would go. So how did you make the decision that you could control easing back into that?
Yeah, well, I think he's right. I was walking with a friend and not doing coaching, mostly mentoring. And I knew him when he was a high school senior at MSUM. And so he came out of alcohol. And I guess 2 years ago, he decided, well, you know what, I'm really not addicted and I can try this again. No, he couldn't. He almost started again and couldn't stop again. So I can relate to that fear.
Yeah, that's one thing that's always been on my mind. I mean, I hear stories of people just saying, "Oh, I just drink a glass of wine every now and then," and I just think, you know what, I've come too far and I've experienced too much of my own happiness that it's just something I have no interest in trying.
Well, I do a lot of networking events, and so obviously our spouses here are loved ones of addicts, and so my wife has seen this, and so she's like, she wants to know explicitly if I had more than 1 beer anywhere, because if it's 2, then her triggers are going off, and she's like, okay, we're not going to do this all over again. And I've got to be more sensitive to that as an addict with a loved one. But at the same time, I really limit myself to that 1 beer as well. I don't cross that line. I've done it with 2 beers from time to time, and I don't now because you can feel a sense of getting a little buzzed.
Sure.
With 2 versus 1. And it's probably because you're not used to it anymore. In the consuming days, took cases. But anyway, I just came to the realization, and here again through my faith journey, that it was good. I'm not attracted or drawn to it. I've always enjoyed a good beer. I never drank cheap beer even in college. So, and to me, my wife will say sometimes, okay, we're having pizza or burgers because you want a beer, because that's usually where I have a beer. How can you not have a beer with pizza or a burger? But that's usually the only time I will have one.
Yeah.
Or a steak.
Sure.
And so she gets kind of upset. I'm the cooker in our family where, if burgers and pizza or steak is on the menu, she's like, okay, how many's it been this week?
Yeah.
And so I think she's my barometer there as well as my faith. I just don't feel that sense of getting drawn back in. Now, at the same time with porn, that's not the case. I have all kinds of protective measures, all kinds of mentors, accountability partners. And for me, that would be the flip side in terms of I just couldn't go there, period.
Sure.
I even had to give up being an accountability partner for someone because with Covenant Eyes, probably the best tool out there. Unwanted is probably the best book written now on porn addiction that I've read. It's current, but they take screenshots of your screen, and so they send them to your accountability partners. And
so you were
yeah.
getting
and you can unblur them to see exactly what they were. And I told this one guy, I said, I can't do this anymore with you. It's tempting me. I can't go there. So I guess it's self-awareness a little bit, knowing, what is going to set you off and what you can have the power over. And surrounding yourself with people that hold you accountable. I've got 7 guys in my life for probably 25 years. And I've had that accountability in my life since the late 90s. I had a friend, I was in the ministry at one time. He was a pastor. He got caught dialing 1-900 numbers out of the church office. So he obviously wanted to get caught, but I'll never forget the thing he said. We were crying on the phone together, and he said, if I'd had one guy in my life.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, yeah, I don't have that. I'm not doing this ever again alone. So
yeah. It's interesting because we know that in adulthood, for all adults, it's harder to make friends than it is in elementary, junior, and senior high school. There's just something about being an adult that makes it hard to connect in that way, but it's particularly hard for men. And I have always thought that it's because men's relationships are really largely centered around sports and drinking.
yeah,
And those aren't things that you are either interested in or choose to do for any reason. You're really left alone.
yeah,
I have a very powerful network of women friends. Maz does not have the same network of male friends. So what piece do you think that actually plays, Mike, in terms of men really suffering often in singular ways with any kind of addiction?
Yeah, I don't know if it's in our makeup or we just have too much testosterone to be vulnerable and open and honest. If you read any addiction books, the key things for all of us is shame and fear. And so that cycle continues to repeat itself. And so you don't want to reveal stuff because you're afraid that once you do reveal it, it's almost like you think you're going to get in more trouble versus it's actually going to free you.
Yeah.
And so how do you convince someone? And maybe here again, it's our society and shaming. And I was going through a devotional once, and the whole thing was 24 hours, just try to do 24 hours. And I thought, well, this is stupid. You could do a week. Well, as I was going through this, I was walking with a buddy and he was stumbling multiple times daily.
Yeah.
And so I just started using that 24-hour rule with him and just saying, hey, it's okay. You're gonna stumble, you're gonna relapse, and I'm here with you. I think that's the other thing that addicts are afraid of is the relapse.
Yeah.
And if I do that, I've let everybody down again and I've lost my friends and they can't forgive me. Well, if you're walking with someone that's an addict, forgiveness has to be on the top of your plate. I mean, it just does.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a fine line between that and enabling, but I'd rather enable on the forgiving side or err on the forgiving side than
Yeah.
being judgmental. Because once an addict acts out, no matter what his drug of choice is, he or she feels guilty enough that you don't have to do that.
Oh, that's powerful.
That's a great way of thinking about that, actually.
I'm sorry that I've become a complete ghost.
Yeah, you're good. I
I know
didn't
the
know if it was a
windows to do it.
paranormal experience or this took off in another direction that I wasn't
Yeah, well,
prepared for.
Yes, no,
there's always something on Daily Dose.
Technology, you love it or you hate it.
well, in this case, we can't even blame technology. It's pure sunlight, but
Oh, that's awesome. I got a shining, glowing host over here.
yes, that's true. That's true. So I love that what you just said, that you would rather err on the side of forgiveness than enablement, because when Maz first got out of the hospital and was early in rehab, and I was working through my own anger and fear and uncertainty, and really addressing things, wow, that I had to address for myself.
Yeah.
I said to him, I'll never do this with you again. So you figure it out or you don't, but I won't be
No.
here if it happens again.
Yeah.
And of course, what I have learned through trial and error and the joy of being married to someone who has stayed sober for 4+ years is I would absolutely do it again. I sure wouldn't be happy about it.
Right.
And I don't want to do it again.
Right.
But the upside to Maz Mary sober outweighs the downside to who he was as an addict.
You bet.
And I can't say to you, oh, I would do it 100 times. I don't know that I would, but I would sure do it again, because your point about forgiveness and acceptance versus judgment, I think
Yeah.
is really, really important.
Yeah. Well, especially for the addict of the loved ones, a lot of times recovery coaching, they don't come in, but the addict does. Well, you can't do that. It affects the loved one just as much as it does the addict. And there's different strategies and techniques to work with loved ones versus the addict.
Yeah.
But the crux of the matter becomes for the loved one, there has to be consequences. We have to have a timeline. There has to be a progression. And how can we work on that together? And I think the breaking point becomes, let's say the timeline is 6 months, nothing's happening. The person continues to act out. There's no effort on their part. Then that becomes harder, versus we do see progress, even if it's baby steps and you hang in there.
So
and it's always baby steps. So
yeah, that leads me to wonder, and it's a little bit like the apostle who says to Jesus, well, how many times should I forgive someone? 7 times?
Yeah.
How there's no answer to this question, Mike, but what's your thought on it? How many times can or should someone, sort of go through this in any iteration with an addict?
No, I
Is
think
it just individual?
Yeah, I think it's tough. I think it's an individual choice too. And I don't think the church, in my opinion, and I'm an ordained pastor. I was a church planner. I was a located pastor, eventually headed a church planning organization. I don't think the church has that figured out either, but I think it's individual. I think when it becomes harmful to the loved one, then as it escalates, then is it life threatening? Well, I don't think Jesus or anyone would want anyone in a life-threatening situation.
Yeah.
And so if it's not to that point and we're making progress and we continue to forgive, and at the same time, progress means doing something. I deal with a lot of addicts and they're only doing one thing. And the addicts I help that really get free, they're involved in many different things for themselves and then giving back as well. So for example, I had a binge recovery patient in peer recovery coaching. And every Thursday, he goes to a local jail here, where that's the first time he realized he was an addict and got thrown in the drunk tank overnight. So he goes and gives back every Thursday there as a reminder. Number one, this is where it started. And number two, how can I help these guys see that?
Yeah.
And at the same time, if you watched Governor Burgum's day, I think we did, my wife and I both watched the addiction special he had for that whole day. And addiction's really changed. I mean, there's enough brain science out to, in my opinion, addiction is a disease. And so that takes on a whole different light of looking at it versus, okay, you just gotta, bear up, knuckle up and get rid of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you might not be able to. So smart recovery groups have come around, another alternative to AA groups, medications, another alternative. Recovery coaching too is good because it's not disruptive and it's confidential. And so let's say someone is embarrassed. They don't want to go to outpatient or inpatient treatment. They can't spend 30 or 60 days out of work, but they got to do something.
Yeah.
And so that's another reason I advocate for it. At least it's a starting point to get them in other things that might not be disruptive, but on the right path to recovery. So,
Oh, there's so much to consider around this simple word, addiction.
yeah,
It's so much more complex and
Yeah.
so much more nuanced and layered than we kind of give it credit for. And I think so often when I hear people throw it around, oh, I'm addicted to my tea.
yeah,
I'm not addicted to tea.
Yeah.
I enjoy tea, but tea
Right.
doesn't control me. Tea doesn't ruin my relationships. Tea doesn't cause me to be unable to function in my life. I mean, addiction is such a serious thing. It's so profoundly disruptive
correct.
that I hope that one of the things that Daily Dose does is help people think about how they use the word.
Yeah,
And to not use
Yeah.
it from a place of judgment, but to also not use it casually, because if you live with addiction, it is a truly life-changing thing
Yeah.
on a day-to-day basis.
You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. Sometimes when I go to AA meetings, I sit sometimes I think about it when I'm listening to someone else, and I just think this is still just one half of the story. We're talking about ourselves, but what about the people we live with, our loved ones?
Yeah.
I almost think that there should be couples AA.
Yeah,
well, I almost justified my addiction at the start because my dad was a mean drunk. I watched him beat several of my mothers up, stepmoms. And so I thought, well, geez, I've never beat my wife, so
yeah.
I'm an okay addict.
Well, I think it's human nature to try to justify our actions.
Yeah.
We all want to not judge ourselves or to be judged by others, and so we come up with ways to explain them. And boy, that is true of everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, I ate this whole bag of potato chips, but it was because, first of all, we don't need to justify it. Either just
Right.
that you've
right.
done it and then figure out how not to do it again tomorrow.
Yeah. I just don't buy the spinach artichoke dip to go with the chips. Then
That's
I'm good.
Yes.
very smart, Mike.
Good call.
Yes, because I'll eat that right
If I buy
back.
the dip, then I'm dead.
Just give me that and a spoon.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, thank you for sharing your
Thank you for being very honest. That
your
was a
journey
wonderful conversation.
and your insights with us. Wow. You have a layer of complexity that we have not really encountered. And because you coach, you have also figured out how to share it in a way that allows those of us who haven't had your journey to have some understanding and insight into it. And that's so powerful.
Yeah, and if we're closing, I just share in closing that, Face It Together was a good name. They didn't have a good business model, but the name speaks for itself. If the addict feels they're alone, they're never going to beat it. And they've got to have someone on the journey with them. And that's probably thing I would encourage any listeners out there this morning, if you are that, and you do feel that aloneness, boys, reach out to somebody or some program. So
Yeah.
you get involved. And then the other thing I see a lot of, and it bothers me even more, so it's an equal opportunity employer, but when I do recovery coaching, I see a lot of addiction that's basically from low income, low education situations, and they're just dead ends, and they just don't have the resources to know any better or do any better. And my heart goes out to those people more. I don't know really how to help them. I don't. I mean, that's what funding's for, and insurance and stuff, but some of these people, they just don't seek help because they just don't have the resources to do it. And boy, if there was some way, I work for Lost and Found's, a nonprofit. Obviously, they don't charge for their services, but if there was more of that going on, we might be able to help the less fortunate that don't have the resources to try to get better. So.
Well, and it's just another aspect of the complexity of poverty, because if you can't see a reason to get sober because your life feels very dead end,
Yeah.
I think that's hard. I mean, Maz had a lot to get sober for.
Yeah.
Not just me and us, but a lot to get sober for. If you don't have that in your life, I think we all need the motivation to keep going.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the people that become addicts to forget how their life is. So being sober and not changing your life, I think will probably make that incredibly hard.
Yeah, or just not having a life of purpose and meaning to go back to. And I don't mean that all poor people have no purpose or meaning, but it's harder if you don't have opportunities, and the fewer resources you have, the fewer opportunities you have.
Yeah. And at the same time, I'd encourage us to help with the addicts as much as possible. It makes, the more I do volunteer recovery coaching, the shorter my pity parties are. So that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
The worst severe case I had was a guy who came in, heroin addict since he's 15. He's 54 now. He looks like 84. And
that's astonishing.
Yeah, I just hope he doesn't kill himself someday.
Yeah.
That's what I hope.
Well, you're certainly playing your part, Mike, probably more than playing your part as you navigate your own journey as well. So
yeah,
just thank you, and continued good luck, and
yes,
confidence in your own worth in staying sober, and all of the paths that you are on.
You bet. I appreciate the time. Hopefully it helps some people. So
I know that it did. You know what? It helped me. And so if I'm one person who learned something new, I know I'm not the only one.
Yeah, I appreciate the time and the invite. So
thank you
so
much, Mike. We'll be in touch soon. Everybody else, we'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
All righty. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.